Now we have our data and our results all in one nice place, and it's been copied, so I'm not working with the original. That's important. As we look at these spots over here, you'll notice that we have just numbers, not formulas. So if we make some changes here, it doesn't mess up all of our calculations. We are now ready to make some graphs. Before we start that, I'm going to just delete two columns. You don't have to do this, but if we delete these two columns that we don't need, then we'll have less stuff sitting in front of us that might mess us up. So we now have the column of time and the other 5 columns that you need to do graphs for. I'm going to just pick one of these. The rest of the graphing is done pretty much the same. I'm going to pick acceleration because that one's got a couple of extra wrinkles that you don't need to do on the rest, so it'll make this just a little bit easier. To start the graph, highlight the data we want to graph. So right here is the data that we're looking at to graph, and I click on charts. Now over here, this might change for you depending on how things set up. Right now I have this all button, and underneath there I want to scroll down till I see marked line graph right here and click on that. Sometimes you're going to see different graphs already over here, and you can just click on the line part and select from there. It's a little bit less. Now over here we see our chart looking pretty nice. Move it over here so we can see what we're doing a little bit, and we want to make some adjustments to this. The first adjustment I'm going to make is clicking right here. Let me enlarge this first for you so you can see a little bit better. This is the series right here, and we don't need that legend. It doesn't do anything for us, so I'm going to click on it and hit the delete key so that it's gone. That gives us extra real estate space for everything else. The next thing I'm going to do is start adjusting the axes on these charts. As you know, units are of extreme importance and labels are of importance, and right now this doesn't tell me anything. So coming back up to here, I'm going to click on chart layout again. You might have to click off or back on, but you want to click back and forth a couple of times so that when you click chart layout, you see these buttons right here. And the first one I'm going to start with is chart title. I'm going to put a chart title above the chart, and right up here I'm going to start typing. This is going to be acceleration. Try that again. And put my title there. Now if I scroll up a little bit, there it is. And I'd encourage you also to put some initials in here so when you print it we can tell whose chart it is, whose graph it is. When you're getting 30 or 40 copies of the same kind of thing, it's nice to be able to find that. Next, axis titles. Horizontal axis, we want to put a title down here. This should be time, and the units are seconds. Always needing our units in. We need a title axis over here for the Y value, a vertical title. We can do any of these options. I like rotated title. Let me just show you very quickly. If I do horizontal title, that takes up a lot of space going like this. That doesn't make sense to me. If I pick vertical title, now it tries to put these letters in this direction, and that doesn't read very well and doesn't fit very nice, especially when you start putting units in there. So I like to do rotated title instead. And now with that, I can select all of this, and since we're doing acceleration, put in our values. Now we need to have meters per second squared for our acceleration. This part right here doesn't look like a squared right now, but I've got the 2 in there. So now I can highlight just that 2 and do a right click in there and come to Format Text, and now select Superscript so I can see the squared showing up nicely. Finally, to get our graph ready to go, these numbers need to be our time numbers. Now our time was not 1, 2, 3, etc. seconds, it was 0.1, 0.2, and so on. To fix that, I'm going to right click inside this area and say Select Data. Right here is the data that I'm graphing, and right here is where I put in the data that's going to be my labels on the x-axis. To do that, I want to come over here and select these numbers. Again, just the numbers. Notice I got my cursor in the open cross form. if I put my cursor somewhere else over here, it gets messy. And I don't want to be graphing other units. I want to be graphing on the x-axis. I want these time numbers. So I'm going to click there and drag down. You'll see that window sort of disappears for a little bit. That's okay. Drag all the way down to the bottom of your time numbers. Then let your mouse button up, and you'll see the formula in here that includes all of those time numbers that were over there. And now if I click OK and I look at my numbers, now those numbers are sitting over here reasonably nice. Now I might be ready, or I might need to make a few more adjustments yet. At this point I'm going to guess, whoops, I just noticed I'm missing C over here for my centimeters. Make sure I get the right units. I'm going to move this graph. Now to do that, I need to click in the margins, like down here, not up here in the plot area, but down here in the chart area. See where it says little chart area right there? Clicking down in this area and do a right click, and I'm going to move the chart. I'm going to move it to a new sheet. I'm going to call this sheet acceleration. Let me try that again. What that does is it puts it in a new sheet for me and spreads everything out. And these numbers look pretty good. If they were too crowded, I have the option of going back to my sheet where I have all these numbers, and I can delete, if it's helpful, every other time number. Don't delete your data numbers. These are the time label numbers. It's all it is the label. So when I delete these every other one, what that's going to do back here on my graph, it now only types in every other one instead of every one, spreads these numbers out a little bit and makes it easier to work. And now when I've done this, I'm ready to print. I can go here to print, and I can see what I'm going to do. If you want, you can wait until you're done. Instead of printing the active sheet, you can print the entire workbook and print all of your graphs at one time. I'm going to leave that go up to you. Hope this has worked great for you. Thanks.